As we've all heard as we've continued in this Lenten season, public masses in the church, the Diocese of Little Rock, have been suspended until May due to Bishop Taylor's responsible leadership in our church for taking care of the common good, and it's something we need to be sacrificial with and be in solidarity with, which will help us all, particularly during this time. Since the time of the Israelites and the Passover, they all needed to hunker down, which has been a phrase stated just in superabundance, but they needed to stay together while death passed over them. And during this time, we're doing a little bit of the same. As we continue with that and be together in our own homes and places we find ourselves in social distancing, it doesn't mean that we're distant from communion. As we all know, when you love somebody, you can be a million miles away and still be right next to them. And if there's an absence of love, sometimes you can be right near somebody and still be a million miles away. So what can we do as we desire to be with the Lord and experience communion in the Blessed Sacrament in that specific and intimate way? We have an opportunity to pray over and go through what's called spiritual communion, which sounds trite, but it's a real thing, and people throughout history, in the history of the church, were able to do that in prayer and staying in communion. One of the examples of that is given to us by St. Alphonse Liguori, that the church teaches that while we wait upon the celebration of Mass, the Lord's love and presence is still with us, and the graces of what are given to us and what we call the source and summit of our Christian life, the Eucharist, as the Second Vatican Council teaches, are still available at this time. St. Alphonse gives us an excellent prayer of communion to speak of these very matters. Alphonse lived through the most part of the late 17th and 18th century. He says this, and let us pray. My Jesus, I believe that you are in the Blessed Sacrament. While waiting for the happiness of sacramental communion, I wish to possess thee in spirit. Come to me, O my Jesus, since I, for my part, am coming to thee. So being in communion with God's love and God's grace is something we can reflect on all the more during this time, with which we'll need to be distanced from one another, and yet nevertheless always in communion.